nervous system dysregulation, quite frankly, is oftentimes a rejection of what we're doing. We sometimes think it's all these other things. I think that's what it is. It's a rejection of, yeah, no, thank you. I don't want to be doing this. And I'm doing it. And so listening to that and then just staying committed to the clarity of your own truth, even when it's not easy, even when it is not convenient.
Hey ladies, welcome to the Calm Edge podcast. I'm your host, Brooke. Does it feel like your brain is stuck in overdrive, spiraling, scanning, second guessing, and keeping you up at night? The Calm Edge is what happens when you stop letting that voice run the show and start leading your life from grounded power. I'm a hypnotherapist, and I help women just like you rewire the subconscious patterns behind overthinking and self-doubt so you can feel calm, confident, and enjoy life again. Let's dive in. Very special guest today, my acupuncturist, Dr. Jessica Sharratt. She is a doctor of acupuncture and Eastern medicine, a functional medicine practitioner, the founder of Heal EastWest, and co-founder of Heal LA, a high-end integrative wellness studio in Manhattan Beach, California. Known for her deeply holistic approach, she blends Chinese medicine, functional diagnostics, and modern longevity therapies to support women through complex health challenges, ranging from fertility to perimenopause. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Jessica is tuning in all the way from Alaska. You're off the grid right now.
Yes. Yes.
It's amazing. Tell us really quickly where you are, because you literally are in the middle of nowhere. I'm surprised you even have Wi-Fi. I didn't know you were going to be.
Well, we have satellite. We've done all the things, my husband and I, to make sure, because we both, need to stay connected for what we do, but want to be able to be where we most feel is home. So we live in a bus that is about, and I would say an hour and a half north of Anchorage. So we're about 30 minutes from the closest town, which happens to be where he grew up. So we have a lot of friends and family in the area. Yeah. And then I'm in our van right now because we also have a van that we travel around the state in. So when we're not in our bus with our 3 dogs, we're in the van with our 3 dogs.
It's amazing. And then when you're not in Alaska, you're either here in LA or in Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah. So we spend some time in Boulder and also in the mountains of Colorado in the Winter Park area, if anyone knows where that is. And then Manhattan Beach, LA is where my brick and mortar is, my original brick and mortar that I know.
That's essentially the dream. So, okay, let's talk about the brick and mortar, which is Heal EastWest. You're a serial wellness entrepreneur, but can you take us all the way back to the beginning to when you decided to create Heal EastWest, which I think was the first venture that you had, correct?
Yes. I love how you call me a serial wellness. I didn't know I was.
Well, I got that from your bio.
Yeah, I am though. Yeah, so my original private practice was Left Coast Wellness, and that was what I created right when I came out of school. And then
as an acupuncturist.
As an acupuncturist, yeah. And so at that point, I was what most of us do when we come out of school. I was generalized. I was trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing and what my path was going to look like. And then I think, like many people, what happened was during the pandemic, there was a transition that occurred. And for me, I'd really started already working with women a lot leading up to that. I'd been doing fertility and women's health for years, but it became really clear that this was what I was meant to be doing. It just became like an undeniable niche for me. And also in that time period with the pandemic, we had this forced opportunity to kind of look at society and our role in it. And I was really seeing that not only were people needing wellness and wanting wellness in a different way than they had prior to 2020, but also people were realizing where this, need for community was coming in. And to me, it just became undeniable that wellness is rooted in community, especially for women. It was like it would wake me up at night, like it became this belief, like this is being channeled into me and it has to be the next step. And so I created Heal East West, transitioned what I was doing into that with the intention of it becoming a collective, so to speak. So I made it with this intention of it becoming something I had no idea what it would be, but I knew it needed to be rooted in community and give people a place of belonging.
Wow. And now you have many practitioners that basically come and work under one roof.
I think it's like 50.
50 practitioners.
Yeah.
And that was, you're
Yeah.
talking about 2020. So that was only 6 years ago.
Yeah.
You also now have the yoga studio, which is the wellness den
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
And the newest, one of my favorites, the longevity
Yes.
studio,
Yes.
right? Which is all of the biohacking machines, which I have talked about on the podcast before. The Vemi bed,
Yeah.
the,
Favorite.
the Immortal machine, and the red light sauna, the dry cold plunge, which I'd never seen before, and the
Yeah.
hyperbaric chamber, which I just tried last week for the first time. So,
Oh, you just did. How did
yeah,
you like it?
you know, it wasn't my favorite. It was good. I did it for 45 minutes, but I'd rather just get on the Vemi bed where I feel that, which everyone's going to have to go Google this right after, or I'll,
Yeah.
I'll share a link below this. You can go check it out. But it feels like a hug for my nervous system.
Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it.
And that's what some of these days I just feel like I'm rushing, as I'm sure you know, you're just
Yeah.
doing all of the things, checking off the list.
Yeah.
And I go there and I lay on that bed, and for 30 minutes, there's nothing to do but just drop into the present moment. And my brain reorganizes. And so even though all of the things there are wellness promoting, right, are good for your body, for me, my brain feeling settled is like the most powerful thing. But
Yeah.
you're one
Yeah.
of the first places. I mean, the Vemi bed is kind of this, it's really new technology.
It
How
is.
did you even think to start something like that?
Yeah. I mean, you and I have talked about this before, but the quote about walking the path and the path appears kind of. And so I feel like some of the best, most creative, wonderful things we do in life can't be planned and can't be like laid out in a document, right? A business plan or a 5-year plan. And so I just had a lot of trust in sticking to this belief I had that wellness grows in community and that this is what was needed at this time where I was. And I kept walking on that path. And so what went from being just me to then being 4 practitioners in one studio. And then we took over, eventually 3 other studios. And so it was just this like organic growth and sort of just like leaning in and listening to what the people we were there to support were asking for and wanted. And when I, got together with my business partner, Brenda, who ironically is the first practitioner I brought on to Heal EastWest when we
Yeah.
moved to the new location. She came on as a psychotherapist. We'd been friends. She was a client. She had one of her babies with me. And we just wanted to work together in a way to bring Heal East West to like another level. And so when we were brainstorming and chatting about like what else could we do here, that's one of the things we felt really kind of passionate about was how can we mix, we already have all this like esoteric kind of healing arts and ancient healing arts, and how do we marry that with what's current and what people are really looking for right now? And so we're like, yeah, let's bring in some of these machines. I'd been doing some in my private practice already, kind of entry level stuff, but then we just were like, we want to bring something together that's truly holistic, that's actually integrative instead of just using the words. And that is, soul meets science, like
Mm.
innovation meets wellness. Like you really can have it all.
So, what did you see missing in the wellness space that you know needed to exist? Would you say that was the community piece?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, that's what I was seeing. And I don't even know that people knew they needed it. But I think that something happens. I'm such a believer in nervous system regulation as such an important part of true wellness. And I think that for us to have that, to achieve that and maintain it, we actually we need to feel safe to feel well. And
Yeah.
part of that's belonging. And I think what the pandemic did is not actually like create a space where people didn't feel like they belonged. I think it's shown a light on elements that had existed in society for a long time, and people just became aware of it because it was like right in front of our faces. And so
Yeah.
really just striving for that, creating a space where people could belong and find a community.
What do you think has contributed to how quickly Heal EastWest has grown into 50 practitioners?
I can't say enough about the practitioners. I was really fortunate because when we created this version of Heal, I've been in this space a long time. And so I know the best of the best. And I know what kind of integrity these people operate with. And, I had hunted pretty hard for the
Yeah.
the people who I really felt I was like, who do I want under this roof if I'm going to send the people I care about and support as my patients to? And so I give a lot of credit actually to this network of practitioners because it creates this feeling of belonging, this feeling of, bringing like such knowledge and such perfection of their craft that you can't help but feel like you're cared for, you're supported in a very personal way. And I think that's another piece of what wellness is really, if wellness is missing something, it's a lot of check boxes and
Mhm.
a little bit less personalized for you and where you're at and what you need. And I think that's something we really strive to do.
Yeah. Well, that's something I think I've really felt in just coming to see you. There's that personal piece, you getting to know and hear my story and how all of that works together versus when I leave the OB after my 6 week postpartum checkup and they're just like, you're good. And I'm like, I am not good. I am not well. I am falling apart. I have vertigo. It's like when I came to you, right? The world was spinning. I had
Yes.
full on vertigo. I was stuck in fight or flight. You walk in and your essence is just calm, which actually leads me to my next question was from the outside, you've got all of these businesses. You're treating patients. You are creating experiences. You've got a retreat, an anti-retreat coming up, which I want to hear more about.
Yeah.
And you're living part-time in Alaska and Colorado.
Yeah.
How do you do all of it without burning out?
It's a
Because
great
you're probably the calmest person I know. You walk into a room and you're just like, hey, and immediately my nervous system just entrains to yours.
love that.
That's half of the healing that you get from that I get from working with you. You're just like, it's all good. What's going
Yeah. You
on?
know, I mean, and this is so much of what I bring to my work, and some of the new offerings are like a transition into this space being the focus. Um, I really think that the most important thing in wellness, in nervous system regulation, is being truly calibrated to your center. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of formulaic belief systems. And I think it's hard to cut through that. And so I think being very, very intentional about continuing to stay clear about who you are and what makes you feel alive and what makes you feel joy and what makes you feel safe and who are you and how do you want to show up. And that being the focus makes the other pieces so much easier. I think nervous system dysregulation, quite frankly, is oftentimes a rejection of what we're doing. We sometimes think it's all these other things. I think that's what it is. It's a rejection of, yeah, no, thank you. I don't want to be doing this. And I'm doing it. And so listening to that and then just staying committed to the clarity of your own truth, even when it's not easy, even when I mean, Alaska in a bus is not convenient for what else I'm doing, right? It's like, But being very clear that I'm willing to do whatever feels like my path gives me it gives me a lot of peace and a lot of, you know, that's where that calm comes from.
Mm, that is a really interesting way to look at nervous system dysregulation. It's a signal that I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing. It's not aligned. And so listening to that versus trying to like fix it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so that's what we, I think, are hardwired to do is like, well, what boxes am I not checking that will regulate me? And it's
Yeah.
like, maybe you need less boxes.
Yeah. It's interesting. There was something else you and I talked about a few weeks ago when I was in your office. You were saying how when you come back from Alaska and you get off the plane and you land at
Yeah.
LAX, how
Yeah.
you feel. And I think this is a really interesting one because when
Yeah.
we're in it, just like
Yeah.
I said to you the first time I came to see you, I said, I don't really feel like I'm stuck in fight or flight. I mean, I feel like I'm calm. But when you've been functioning at that level for so long, you almost can't, it's really hard to even be able to detect that you are activated.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because your comment, like Jess, you're calm, you're zen. I do a lot of work to stay there, right? I'm routined in a way that supports that because I do believe for my own existence that's important, and I believe it's important for the people who get on my table and come to me and trust me, right? Um, when I started coming to Alaska, I'd be up here for, a handful of weeks, and there's like this emptiness. There's just like it's negative space. There's nothing filling it. And I breathe easier. Everything, to be really honest, I sleep better. My digestion's better. Like I just have a different level of clarity. But what really, to your point, I noticed and just hit home this like nervous system regulation struggle we're all in is this noise that sort of fills in, and there's no negative space once I get back to LA. Like the minute I get off the plane. And I'm like, wow, I feel really regulated, but look at how much I have to do to stay that way. And here, like I don't do anything to stay that way. And so it
Yeah.
was just this really interesting realization of like how much efforting we're all doing just to be okay. And like oftentimes not even okay.
Yeah.
Um, and
And it,
so,
it being the noise and the world that we live in, that it is so imperative that we have these practices.
yes.
Curious, what is your routine when you're in
Yeah.
LA? What are some of those things that you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty non-negotiable about certain things each day. I don't start work before 10. That's a luxury. I understand that.
I
But to
love
me,
that one.
y-
Snaps.
yeah. But I do think that whatever that looks like for you, each person, being being very protective of your time, of your schedule.
Yeah.
So where you can make boundaries, make them that are in support, right?
Yeah.
So for
Like
me,
for me, I actually love seeing clients at 8 a.m. Like I love my morning and I like to be done in the afternoon, spend time with
yes,
the baby. Like
yes,
afternoon, I'm chilling. Like I'm more morning.
yes, which,
Yeah.
sidebar, this is what is so interesting about wellness to me is that we're sold it in sort of a formulaic way. And it's like, that's impossible, right? Because Brooke's different than Jess, is
Mhm.
different than, right? Part of it is just being committed to tuning in on what works for you and then defending that, right? And supporting that. And so for me, it also looks like sunlight and movement very early in the day. I always say if I haven't moved before I get to work, I'm no good to anyone. And that's just my truth. That's my truth. I have to move. Um, Prayer and meditation every single morning, setting aside the time I prep my food for the day so that I'm can be mindful about what I'm going to be consuming throughout the day. And so then I know that what I'm putting in good, I'm going to put out good. And so, just those things are really important to me. And I'm pretty, especially as I've aged, I'm pretty resistant to taking on too many social things. I love to say no so that I can say yes, you know?
Yes.
I tend to like avoid too much social interaction. I don't do things out of obligation.
But
Yeah,
that's a big one.
it's
That
a
is a
big
big
one.
one.
It's a
How
big one.
I'm sure you see this a lot with your clients, right? And
Yeah,
I think we see
yeah,
this, I see this a lot with my clients and friends and family is obligation.
yeah.
But that comes back to what you were talking about earlier, dysregulated nervous system. You're doing something you don't want to be doing or that's
Yes,
not aligned. And I
yes,
think there is in hypnotherapy, I talk a lot about this like good girl syndrome, the inner
yeah,
child
yeah, yeah.
that wants to please everyone. Your nervous system actually feels unsafe saying
Yes,
no or just saying I can't
yes,
make it without an explanation.
yeah.
It is like an endemic in itself.
100%. There's oftentimes patients will be on the table and we don't just do acupuncture even when we're just doing acupuncture, right? So we'll be having a
Yeah.
conversation and they're like, da 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 da, I have to. And
Yeah.
they get sometimes I think they're frustrated with me because I'm known for saying like, but do you have to? And it's not inflammatory. It's just we don't even ask ourselves, but do I have to?
Right.
And maybe let me just sit with that and unpack it. And maybe I don't have to. And
Yeah.
everything, right? We know this, but everything we say no to means we're saying yes to something else.
Mm.
So let us be certain that we're saying yes to the things we want to be saying yes to.
Mm. Yeah. I'm remembering now a conversation you and I had actually about even how many clients I'm seeing right now as a new mom.
Yeah.
That's been an area for me to set boundaries. And every time I get excited and bring a bunch of new people on, and I'm like, oh, this feels good. And then I fill up my calendar. And then the next week, I'm like, holy shit, this is a lot. I need to dial it back. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And that's the season that I'm in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
I
that's,
am, go ahead.
oh no, that had a glitch.
Oh, yeah.
There was a time glitch. So it looked like you had stopped.
What were you saying? I forget. My mom brain already has gone off. I have no
Oh,
idea what I was saying.
I was just saying that I think, and also to build on that is like having that grace for yourself in those moments too, is that sometimes the clarity doesn't come until we're moving through it. So saying yes to something might feel good in the moment. And then as things unfold, you're like, okay, I'm a yes, but I'm a yes with an asterisk, right? And having there just be grace as we're figuring it all out and allowing ourselves to change and edit and flow and change our minds.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about perimenopause because I know you have a new program that you're offering
Yeah,
for it's interesting because being 40 and also being postpartum, I feel like postpartum and perimenopause kind of like
they're
from what I
cousins.
learned from you, right? So what actually is it? Because going to a typical primary care physician or OB, you might share some of these symptoms and be told, oh, yeah, like that's normal. And like grin and bear it, suffer through it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
same way I heard with all of my endometriosis and period symptoms, like, oh, just take more Advil. Even though you're already taking 12 Advil a period, just take more. And that's all I have for you, right? And send you on your
yes,
way.
yes.
So, why don't you share with us what exactly is it? Why do so many women feel blindsided by it? And a little bit about what you teach and share with women in your group program.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting thing, progression for me because I've been solely doing fertility for so long and all the pieces that come along with that, right? Pregnancy, postpartum, endometriosis, PCOS, you know. And then what started to happen is that a lot of my moms have had their second with me or their third with me. And it's like now we're all moving into perimenopause together. And it just became sort of this next step that made a lot of sense because it was the next area that I felt like women weren't being properly supported, to your point. And
Mm.
so, the truth about perimenopause is that most of us are in it 10, sometimes even 15 years before we have a symptom, before we know it. And so, not only that, not only when you start to have symptoms, you go to your doctor and they're like, well, you're just getting older, right? We don't have
Yeah.
any solutions or suggestions for you. But we've now spent the preceding 15 years not building a foundation. And so the irony is that, I do a ton of preconception planning with people when they're going into like fertility, trying to conceive. And I thought we should be doing the exact same thing for perimenopause, building the foundation in advance so that we can enter this phase of enormous transition, mental, emotional, psychological, physical, in a space where we can sort of have a different relationship with it, where it's one where we feel not in control, right, of it, but in control of our relationship with it, as opposed
Mm.
to being reactive. And so I'm going to be doing group functional work also for fertility and for some other, women's health subsets. But I'm starting with peri. And so part of that is whether you have a symptom, you don't have a symptom, you're fully in it, you think you're maybe 10 years out, like building that foundation in advance to just give you the best possible transition you can have.
What are some of the most common symptoms that you're seeing that maybe women don't realize are connected to perimenopause?
I think I would say the first two that people do not know are connected are mood changes. Like all of a sudden, a lot of women will be like, it was my first one. My very first symptom was all of a sudden, I had moments of what I thought was anxiety, and I'd never had anxiety in my entire life.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, what is going on?
Mm.
It's these fluctuations in hormones, particularly progesterone, can feel like anxiety. And you
Mm.
feel like you're like, I don't feel anxious, but I feel anxious in my body. And
Like
so,
heart racing,
yeah,
palm sweaty.
absolutely. Some of it's physical, some of it's just sort of like this tired but wired feeling that then
Yeah.
translates into anxiety. And then another one is sleep for
Yeah.
women. It's those are probably the two biggest. And it's like we just start to feel like we don't quite have the same aptitude for the things we used to have aptitude for. So our
Yeah.
stressors now feel bigger.
Do you think that these symptoms were always there for our mother's generation, the women before that, and it just wasn't talked about? Or do you think it's getting worse because the xenoestrogens and all the things that we're getting exposed to in our environment that's causing hormone imbalances that turn into endometriosis and PCOS? And then we're ending up with all of these imbalances as we move into menopause. And that's why we're seeing the symptoms get worse.
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think that our moms and our moms' moms didn't talk about it. There really was no arena for it. I mean, women were shut down even more so then than they are now, bringing concerns to their doctors. So that for sure is true. And thank God we live in a time now where we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a stage. But also to your point, I think there are things that contribute to it being a harder road. It's the toxins and the endocrine disruptors and what kind of medication have we all been on and hormonal birth control. And also one of the biggest driving forces in perimenopausal symptoms is cortisol regulation.
Mm.
So, you know, cortisol runs the show. And perimenopause is this time, like we have this misidea that it's just dropping estrogen, but it's not. It's actually hormones that fluctuate erratically, which is why you feel like you can't get control of the situation. And you feel like a different person every single day. And one day you'll feel great. And then you think you've got it figured out. But then things are constantly changing. And then you're back to like not feeling good again. And so, but those things are exacerbated and those fluctuations are exacerbated when your cortisol is dysregulated. So it's the hormone that it rules the roost. It runs the show. So, um, our cortisol dysregulation, 1,000,000% is at a
Wow.
different level than it was for our moms and their moms. And so you combine all those things together and it's just it's a rough ride.
Well, and it's to the point you were sharing earlier when you come back to LA from Alaska, we're being constantly bombarded with things that are happening on the other side of the world. We've got these little devices that notify us of a disaster, right? And every time we watch something on the news, we read something, we hear something, our brain reacts and tells the
Hmm.
body release cortisol. And so just constantly getting hit with stress. I mean, one of the ways that I really try to field that as a hypnotherapist, although even as a hypnotherapist, I'm not perfect. That's why I come to see you.
Hmm.
That's why
Yeah.
I lay on the Vemu bed. But it's really being mindful about what I choose to take in. I read the news. I don't watch the news because I find that it's easier to emotionally kind of field what I'm actually taking in by reading versus seeing images of it
Yeah.
when something's really heavy, because as there is plenty of things happening in the news right now that are heavy, right? And just being
Yes.
really intentional with
Yes.
how much, and I'm on a need to know basis. Like I don't need to know everything
No.
all the time.
No. 100%. And I think too that something happens like once it's in the algorithm of your phone, now you're a captive audience.
Mhm.
Right? So now it's popping up, whether you want to know about
Yeah.
it or not. And I try and be, to your point, like you, I try to be really mindful about how am I consuming information at what intervals. And I work really hard at my algorithms being like
Mhm.
puppies, dancing, wellness.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
There it is. Another great clip for. Well, but also what you're feeding your brain all the time, just like the algorithm on your phone, there's an algorithm in your brain.
100%.
So if you wake up and you do your meditation, your prayer, your gratitude journal, you're setting
Yeah.
your algorithm for the day for
Yeah.
what you're going to experience and feel. So
Yes.
we kind of digress here into mindset work for a second, but to take it
Yes.
back to the symptoms you were sharing, as somebody who's maybe on the verge of some of these things, are we destined to experience this? Is this just going to happen and there's nothing we can do about it, or can we actually curb these symptoms? And what are some of the simple things, maybe one or two things that women can do right now to set a foundation to minimize some of those symptoms?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great question. Generally speaking, I mean, it is happening to all of us at some point if we're fortunate enough to live long enough, right? It's happening. And it's supposed to, right? It's supposed to. One of the like things out there that I love the most is there's this transition, and Dr. Mindy Pelz talks about it a lot, if you follow her at all, about how part of the decline in estrogen is meant to take us from caretaker role into the role of like wise elder, which is
Wow.
historically in tribal communities what women are meant to become when they come out of childbearing years. And so embracing that it's like this beautiful opportunity for a new chapter. So we all are going to get there hopefully and that's it gets to be that if we want it to. And I think some of the things that can kind of help us is in advance building this foundation we talked about as opposed to being reactive to it. And I think some of the biggest things going into perimenopause is getting our cortisol regulated, getting our blood sugar regulated. And the biggest piece is actually like forgetting all the things that you've been told to do. Because the reality is, and it's such a hard thing for women to hear and accept because of our programming, is doing more is going to harm you in this phase of life. And moving into a space of resistance to that kind of existence is going to help you set that foundation where you can thrive in perimenopause as opposed to be reactive. So things like hard cardio, sleepless nights, pushing, 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 fasting, no carbs, these things do not work. Not only do they no longer work, they actually will harm you. And it's so difficult. Believe me, I get it too, right? I have to talk myself out of the wiring. These things don't work anymore. And I have to have an ability to like resist that programming if I want to thrive.
Mm. Yep. I mean, since I've started working with you, I've stopped hot yoga sculpt classes, right? Which even just the name, what was I doing all those years?
Sounds aggressive.
I loved those classes, but it's just the deep, deep programming, the belief systems of like, I have to go harder in order to lose weight or drop the baby weight, right? Postpartum, there's all these beliefs that come in, what I need to do to get, quote, back to where I was before, which she gone, right? There's a new version of me, right?
That's right.
But
And thank God.
it's belief, they are belief systems, though. It's conditioning. It's taken me almost a whole year to really shed some of those things and realize I stopped the hot yoga sculpt, but I still was doing hot yoga. And then I finally stopped the hot yoga altogether. And when I did, I realized my body feels better,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I was just pushing so much.
I think what builds into the challenge of that is when we're running on cortisol, that sometimes feels good.
Yeah.
It's a high because
Mm.
our body's kicked up the cortisol so we can survive. And so, right, it's like when our ancestors were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you get this burst of energy so that you can run and not get killed. And so I think we're wired in a way now and so conditioned that we actually don't know what is a stress response versus what is a feel-good response. And so we get our signals get crossed and we think, but I feel so good when I do this. But we're saying that because of that cortisol surge as opposed to really being in conversation with our body. And those are two
Mm.
different things.
I know that you've done some work in with trauma work,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So, how do you think that plays a role? Because I think so many women, we've been taught to disconnect from our bodies, even if it's trauma with a little t, right? Or even if it's, for me, it was just having a college field hockey coach that would say, push through the pain, right? I'm curious how you have seen that come through with women just being disconnected and not even being able to feel in their bodies.
Yeah, I mean, embodiment's a huge part of the problem, rather disembodiment, right? I really believe through our traumas and through our programming have been taught to completely disengage from our bodies. Like our body is the enemy. We don't treat it as our best friend, which we should. And it prevents us from being able to take care of it, which then means it prevents us from being able to take care of ourselves. Like we see us and our body as two different things when they're, especially for women, they're not, they're the same because women are just this like miraculous, cohesive, holistic being. And so really befriending your body and kind of overriding that disembodiment we've been programmed for is a huge step. Healing the trauma, listening to it, letting it be our guide,
Yeah.
regardless of what the noise says.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a huge part. It's an element of the group work that I do, whether it's perimenopause or fertility. It's an element that I bring in my private sessions because I think it's so important. And then it's a huge part of what we're bringing in, to the anti-retreat, as you called it.
So the group work is virtual, right? So anybody from anywhere all over the country or the world could essentially join. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the group work is virtual and it's tiered. So the entry level tier is education. And so that makes it accessible to anyone anywhere. And then there's additional tiers beyond that, and those are reserved for, people who are in states I'm licensed in,
Mhm.
which is California, Colorado, and Alaska at this point. And that's one-on-one care. But the education, depending on the program, is 10 to 12 weeks of functional health education that, you know, if you were to go to a functional medicine practitioner and get that amount of education, what that would cost. And
Yeah.
that's a huge part of the driving force for me is the kind of care we need and we're not getting as a people, but particularly as women, because that's who I work with, it's inaccessible even for people with money. And that just should not be. So we should be able to at least know the things we need to do and then bring in that community element of doing it together. And now there's a group of women alongside you, and you're no longer feeling that isolation of what you're going through.
Mm.
So yeah, so people from anywhere can get that education piece.
Yeah. On how to support your body and moving through that transition, how to set
Mhm.
foundations, essentially.
Yes. Yes.
And we're going to link to that below so that you
Yeah.
can check out your group program.
Yeah, and so there'll be ongoing cohorts for perimenopause and fertility, and you can go in and get on the wait list or sign up for the next one from there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that our medical system is so far behind on this? Like, what the fuck? Like,
I
why
mean,
do I go to a women's doctor and she knows nothing about hormones?
that should be the name of a podcast. What the fuck?
I think you should start a podcast called What the Fuck, actually. That would be so on brand. And
You know
anyway,
what? You'll be my first guest.
I
I
sure will.
promise you that. I think it's nuanced and I think it's layered. And, I'm gonna say something that I don't know, maybe unpopular, but we live in a patriarchal society. Like, let's just be really honest. Like we do. There's no denying it. And we've come a long way, but it's still patriarchal in nature. So our research is based in men, training of doctors is based in men's health. Um, it's everywhere. And so
Yeah.
women are just now feeling empowered to advocate for themselves. And this is an amazing time for our daughters to be, even though the world is like, what the fuck? There are so many amazing women that are advocating and pioneering right now to change the landscape for our daughters. And so, yeah, I think we're just,
You
I think,
being one of them with
oh,
this very specific program, though, no, for real. I mean, that's when I first saw you sharing about this group program, I sent it to a bunch of girlfriends because just like you said, I have so many girlfriends who are at this stage or even just like postpartum and want to work with a functional medicine practitioner, but can't even like think about. I mean, you pay out of pocket, right, for the one-on-one, you pay out of pocket for all of the labs, right? It just adds up, adds up, adds up, adds up, and it just feels so overwhelming that
yes.
and so when I found out about the group program, I was so excited because that's a resource that is so needed right now more than ever. But also, like you said, we're paving you essentially with programs like these are paving the way for our daughters. And hopefully it'll be different for them.
Yeah, and
Hopefully,
I think the more we talk about it, the more we demand something different, things
yeah,
change. It
yeah.
changes and it takes time and it's slow, but
So one of the other offerings you have coming up is the anti-retreat.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Why don't you tell us about it's called Sealed. I
yes.
saw you sent me the information on this and I was like, my mouth was watering. Tell us about this experience.
Yeah, so it's the website is sealedjourney.com, so you can check it out there. The idea was really this next phase of wellness and sort of a rejection of wellness from like a performative sense. And, you know, that to be well, you don't have to show up and check the boxes and like wear certain outfits and do certain yoga poses and so it was sort of like taking the retreat concept back to what I believe for me, what I want it to be and what I put out there of something that's truly about wellness and not performative based, So the idea is just existing is enough, just existing is enough to earn the right to be well, and that you don't have to be good or productive or seen by the world in a certain light in order to achieve that, and sort of just takes away this noise. And it's really more about women transitioning into their next iteration. And there's a big component of that nervous system piece we talked about, identifying what no longer works for you, like what is your nervous system and body saying no to, that we need to help you unshackle from and let go so that you can step into this next version and this next chapter.
Wow. Wow. It makes me think about the conversation we had earlier about saying no to those things and how physically it can feel impossible sometimes.
Yeah, and how it came to be was kind of interesting because a very dear girlfriend of mine who hosts it with me, and she's this amazing private chef, we sort of
Mm,
had these like paralleled journeys at the same time, not knowing, of like health scares and things going on with our families and our partners and just our worlds literally imploding.
mm,
And getting to this moment, I remember the moment I woke up and I remember saying in my head, it will never be the same. Nothing will ever be the same from this moment. And everything is now under a microscope, and most things are not going to make the cut for me. So I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a
mm,
four-time cancer survivor. And I had, I go through routine screenings just to sort of, my oncology team's like, let's stay on top of things for you.
mhm,
And so I was going through some screenings and had some scary tests come back positive for tumor cells, basically active tumor cells. At the same time, it was literally the same day, my mom was diagnosed with advanced terminal stage 4 ovarian cancer. And at the same time, my husband was going through a major health crisis. He'd had a surgery that was the result of a mountaineering accident that then reactivated sepsis in his body. And he had all these health issues, and we actually got hospitalized. We thought he was having a heart attack. All these things were happening at the same time. And and I remember it was August 12th, and I woke up and I'm just like, this is the day. It will never be the same from this point forward. And I just in this moment of turmoil, I had this moment of clarity that everything was now going to be under the microscope from this point forward, and so many things were not going to make the cut. And I had lost my willingness to say yes to anything that remained that I didn't want to say yes to. I had lost my willingness to perform for someone else's comfort. I had lost my willingness to stay in relationships that were not mutual. And I also felt an enormous amount of grief in that because I was like, if I'm not this person I've been doing things the way I've been doing them, who am I? And I also felt a massive amount of like loss and being lost and not knowing, like, what does that mean for my practice? What does that mean for who I am and how I show up in the world? And I really struggled because I was like, my whole life has been built on helping women through transition. And I also feel like I can't give myself that own gift. And girl, I sat in that for a long ass time because I was like, I also can't like proceed. I can't be authentic in what I'm doing if I don't honor this next iteration of who I'm meant to become. Right. And so at the same time, my girlfriend Caitlin was going through this parallel thing, and she had a health scare and was admitted to the hospital and almost died, frankly. And we sat down and had dinner together, and we were just like, concurrently, she moved back to the forests of Ohio, and it was again, there's these things about dates and synchronicity. it was exact day that I moved the majority of my belongings to Alaska. And, you know, and just trusted that the next chapter will unfold as it's meant to be. And so Seal Journey is one of the things that came out of that as sort of this, we just felt like so called to create something that can help support women through these times, these chaotic times of actually wanting so badly to transition into who they're meant to be next and not feeling like they know how to do it and feeling paralyzed by it.
Or also not waiting for the health scare to open their eyes to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I always say, like, this is just one of the most beautiful things about it. You know, our parents can be our greatest teachers, right? And my mom and I have had sort of like a strained, interesting relationship over the years. And so I always say, well, I've learned so much through my mom and through our relationship, right? But then in this like 11th hour of her life, my mom turns into this like phoenix rising from the ashes. And she just like shows up with all this like courage and vulnerability and, facing the end of her life in a way with so much grace and beauty. I mean, I was like, who is this lady? But one of the things that she said to me in this time when I had all this grief and didn't know what my life was going to look like, and she said, I mean, she was teary and vulnerable, and she just said, honey, you have to live your life in a way that brings you joy. And we say that, but when your terminal mother says that to you, there's this weight, there's this thing that makes you think, no, actually that is all that there is. And in my practice, I've encountered so many women that do so much for so many people and yet feel completely incapable and paralyzed of like making that next step for them when they know it's right. And so it's about that. It's how can we offer this small piece that gives women a platform of community to transition and to feel courage in doing so.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't know that. I'd never heard that story.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
all just in the last year.
This is all in the last year. Yeah.
Wow. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it speaks to so many women, though. This sense of, I need to make this choice for myself, or something has to give, versus it's easier to just keep the peace, right? Eventually, your body's going to force you.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Our bodies revolt. Our nervous systems are like, I'm saying no, and you're not listening.
Yeah.
And there's a trade we make in that.
Yeah. Question for you. This is kind of taking it back, but before you became an acupuncturist, do I recall, were you in pharmaceuticals? Was Did you
I
mention this?
I have been in every
Like, I want to hear this part of the story. Like, where were you before you turned to acupuncture and this became your thing? Because,
I've had like 800 lives, I think, before. I mean, I was in business operations management for years with startups and entrepreneurs. I taught kids to drive for years.
love that.
I I was
A
in
lot of people in LA could probably use you still.
I was in pharmaceuticals. I mean, I've had so many different jobs. I was a kickboxing coach.
What was the point at which you decided to pivot and go back to school essentially for acupuncture? Because obviously, this is your soul's mission. What were you experiencing in all of those jobs that brought you to this point?
So this is actually pretty crazy. I kind of always said, my first degree was in nutrition. And I always sort of knew I'd end up back in health and wellness. That's what I was passionate about. I loved it. And I just always trusted that there was going to be a moment that felt like divine timing, and I would know it when it happened. But I'd been unstuck on Survive for so long, right? Well, this was years ago, and I actually I had a foster son, and he like changed my life a million times over again. And what had happened was we were going through the process where his parents were trying to get him back in their lives and get guardianship back. And so we were doing this process, and he was with me during that window of time. And I remember um, Cameron got rehomed back into his parents after having been with me. When he first came to me, I remember, and I was asked if I could take him. I remember thinking, the social worker was like, you can think about it. I can give you till Monday to think about it and let me know. Otherwise, he's going to a group home. And I was like, I don't need to think about it. In all the turmoil in my childhood, I remember thinking in that moment, I never had to wonder where I was going to sleep. I never had to wonder if I was going to be okay in that way. So fast forward to Cameron gets rehomed, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that I'd been so blessed and so gifted, even through all my challenges in my life, to have been given opportunities that so many people don't get to have, and to not waste that. And it hit me. It was like another one of those things where I woke up and it just hit me. Like, do not waste another moment of your life and the opportunities you've been given. And it was that very day, I opened up I don't even read a newspaper. I don't read the newspaper. I open up a newspaper, and there's an ad for acupuncture school. I'm not making it up. And it sounds so crazy. This is how I make decisions in life. And it was like, it was a laser beam from the universe. And I was like, okay. And I applied.
Had you ever even done acupuncture at this point?
I had received it. I had received it. Yes, of course.
Okay.
But basically that was it. I was supposed to go to Burning Man in an RV that like a homeless man had gifted to me. And I was like, well, it's that or I'm going back to school. so, so I gave away the RV and moved to LA and hadn't even applied yet. And here we are. So yeah.
There we have it. I think that right there is the perfect place to wrap all of this up. That is the most unbelievable story. And also just thank you so much for sharing your light. I've had the honor of receiving, but I feel like now all of the women who are listening today are also probably feeling the permission to say no to some things that are no longer serving you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Learn how to calm an overactive mind and lead your life from grounded power. My one-on-one personalized hypno coaching experience is designed to help you rewire subconscious patterns so calm becomes your superpower. Click the link below to schedule a complimentary 30-minute consultation call and let's chat.